I know that when I'm not traveling and the thumbnail's up and functioning, that it says that this is breaking news. Well, this really is breaking news. The latest GDP figures now confirm what many economists have warned for months. The UK is slipping into a pattern of chronic stagnation, and the Chancellor's approach has exacerbated, not alleviated, that weakness. October's 0.1% contraction, followed by a 0.1% in September, and a flat August means Britain has not recorded any meaningful growth since June. For a government whose fiscal rules depend entirely on raising the growth rate, this trend is not merely inconvenient, it is existential, it is a demonstration of government's failure. Reeves entered office promising to be the growth chancellor, the figure who would drag Britain out of the years of underperformance. Instead, she faces the ignominy of delivering the weakest early fiscal record of any post-war chancellor, with business confidence ebbing, investment postponed, and unemployment beginning to creep upwards. Her defence, that circumstances are challenging, is true but insufficient. Growth is disappointing everywhere, but Britain is now performing worse than the Eurozone average, worse than the United States, worse than most of its G7 peers. Something specific is going wrong in domestic policy. That is called Rachel Reeves. The Treasury's communication over the autumn has been, to put it blunt, chaotic. Weeks of contradictory briefings about possible income tax rises froze business planning, consumer spending, and investment flows. The Prime Minister refused to guarantee rates. The Chancellor appeared poised for a rise and then abandoned it, and the Financial Times received rogue briefings that were promptly disowned. This is not a marginal issue. Firms delayed hiring because they could not calculate future labour costs. Households postponed purchases because they feared a squeeze. Markets jittered as gilt yields jumped by 13 basis points in a single morning. Economic management requires calm signalling. Instead, the Treasury produced noise, speculation, and self-inflicted uncertainty, all at the command of Rachel Reeves. When Reeves finally delivered her second budget, the package did not restore confidence. No one was going to admire her package in the same way as we were told to admire Kwasi Kwarteng's. She unveiled 26 billion in tax rises, principally on landlords, pensioners, wealthier households, and betting companies. The Office for Budget Responsibility warned that these measures were not likely not only to they were unlikely to stimulate growth, but they carried unpredictable behavioural consequences. Capital gains revenues are infamously volatile, yet they form part of her fiscal arithmetic. The OBR's verdict was stark. The budget would not significantly improve investment, productivity, or long-run supply capacity. In effect, the Chancellor piled on tax while delivering no catalyst for expansion. The OECD has already noted that the UK's falling labour supply, particularly the decline in workers coming to Britain, is dampening potential output. This is a direct result of the government's migration policies, which have shut off sectors from labour streams they require to grow. Construction, hospitality, logistics, agriculture, and care are all reporting labour shortages, which could be filled by migration. That coincides precisely with October's ONS data: construction down 0.6%, services down 0.3%. When you make the labour market smaller, it is hardly surprising that the economy shrinks with it. It's striking that production grew by 1.1% in October. Manufacturing showed signs of recovery after the JLR cyber attack. That should have offered a rare moment of good news, yet it too has been overwhelmed by the slump in services and construction, the sector most sensitive to consumer confidence and policy signalling. This is why Reeves now faces a credibility crisis. The downturn cannot be blamed on external shocks. It aligns too closely with domestic decisions. The Treasury briefings suppressed spending. The budget created pessimism rather than stability. The long-run migration squeeze is now visibly depressing output. Business groups and analysts have become saying openly what they previously worded diplomatically. Treasury policy is the problem. Oxford Economics points to no sign of sustainable growth driver emerging. Pantheon Macroeconomics directly assigns responsibility for the slowdown to the Chancellor's uncertainty. The former Bank of England officials have publicly criticised the Treasury's political mismanagement. The confidence is not is not a mere psychological measure. It drives investment pipelines, retail volumes, and hiring, and the Chancellor has failed absolutely to preserve it. This is her undoing. This is her job. This is what she has done. She is undoing everything. She is a failure. She is a catastrophe, a walking, dismal manifestation of foolishness. Reeves's credibility hinges now on a single claim that she can turn stability into momentum. The issue is that she has not delivered stability, that there is no momentum. Well, there is some momentum, but it's going in the wrong direction. Growth has stalled. Unemployment is rising. Inflation has eased, but largely due to global energy effects, and tax policy has become an instrument of panic rather than strategy. Her opponents have an easy narrative. She promised growth. She delivered contraction. She promised stability. Her speculation destabilized the economy. She promised clarity. Markets and businesses received confusion. The Treasury line that ministers want to defy the forecasts reads as wishful rather than confident. There is a growing gap between rhetoric of transformation and the daily statistical reality. And the latest data signals that the economy is running without a meaningful growth driver. The UK is experiencing weak productivity, declining business dynamism, more firms exiting than entering, squeezed consumer spending, labour shortages, tax uncertainty, falling investment. Reeves' strategy depends on growth to fund public services. Without growth, she will either have to raise more tax, cut spending, or abandon her fiscal rules. Each option is politically poisonous. Each option is her own decision, is her own. She has done this to herself. The Bank of England may cut interest rates soon, which will ease pressure, but monetary policy cannot compensate for strategic drift at the Treasury. Rachel Reeves argued for low growth. She said that low growth was not Britain's destiny. She was right, but low growth becomes your destiny when economic mismanagement is erratic, signalling is confused, and fiscal policy is constructed without a coherent supply-side plan. That is what Rachel Reeves has provided. This is not simply unfortunate timing, it is a direct challenge to her authority and her competence. Today's 0.1% contraction is small in itself, but symbolically immense. It confirms the narrative that Britain is drifting, that the Chancellor is reactive rather than strategic, and that the Treasury has lost control of the confidence cycle on which modern economies depend. If she cannot reverse that quickly, and I suspect she cannot because she's been incapable of doing anything else since she's got into office, the story of 2025 will be remembered not as a year of growth returned, but as the year the Chancellor mismanaged the first fragile steps of recovery and allowed stagnation to become the defining condition of the nation's economy. Rachel Reeves' fault, and Rachel Reeves needs to either solve it or walk away.